So I had Grant McCulley on my show last night, and he was talking about the idea of, we were talking about the pitching staff, and obviously know Wright, Frieder, Strider, and Charlie Morton, right? We know those four guys. Then he was talking about the idea of, listen, it's going to be a competition between Ian Anderson, Mike Soroka, maybe Bryce Elder, whatever like that for that fifth spot. And I said to him, I said, would they go to a six-man rotation? Would they use more guys? And he said, probably not. That there'll be probably a clear winner with all of these guys. But the idea of that guys always get hurt, things happen, right? You need more starting pitching. Okay. But I thought what was interesting that he said is, I said, well, what's going to happen to the guy who, for lack of a better term, is the loser in this race? If it's Soroka or Ian Anderson, whoever it ends up being is the fifth starter. If they're truly going to go with one guy and not necessarily expand out to six, what's going to happen to the other guy? And he said probably most likely they would make some starts down in Gwinnett. And I was thinking to myself, now look at the two main guys that are fighting for this fifth spot. Ian Anderson was a key cog in the Braves World Series run a couple of years ago, right? He may have been their best starting pitcher in the playoffs that year. Think about a few years ago that Mike Soroka was arguably the one or two best pitchers in the National League. And we go back to that St. Louis series where he should have, Snicker should have started Soroka, but he was arguably one of the two best pitchers. And then obviously injuries and things like that happen. Are those guys going to be okay with the idea of they find themselves down in Gwinnett to start the year? I mean, you've got two really accomplished pitchers. And before you talk about the idea of they're going to the bullpen, neither one of those guys has ever pitched out of the bullpen. Ian Anderson, every game that he's ever pitched has been as a starter. Mike Soroka, every game he's ever pitched as a starter. So I don't think you'll convert either one of those guys to being in the bullpen, that you'll send those guys, to the pen if they don't, if somebody wins the, if it's Ian Anderson wins the fifth spot, Soroka's not going to the pen and vice versa. So are those guys going to be okay with the idea of they're going to be in Gwinnett to start the season? And I know Soroka's coming back from injury. I know Anderson's coming back from injury. I understand all that part of it. But the mentality of those guys were at high levels for a championship team, or in Soroka's case, he was the ace of their staff just a couple of seasons ago. So once you get past some of the injuries, and obviously these guys have had a, off season to work out, and they'll have spring and everything like that. And we have a normal spring training this year, right? We're not having the condensed schedule and all those kinds of things. Are those guys going to be all right with the idea of somebody's going to end up starting in Gwinnett? More than just the injury aspect of it, more than just the idea of one of those guys is, or they're both coming back from injury. So it makes sense for those guys to get some innings and get some, reps and things like that, and get some starts down in Gwinnett. And maybe by the time, let's say if Soroka goes down to Gwinnett and he starts pitching down there, maybe at that point somebody either gets hurt or whatever, or somebody struggles or whatever like that, and they bring Soroka up. God forbid that somebody would get, an injury, but things happen, right? You always have to have more starting pitching and things like that. But I just wonder from the mindset of those two guys, because we're not talking about two guys that are just barely hanging on in Major League Baseball. We're talking about one of the best pitchers in the postseason from a championship team a couple of years ago. And Mike Soroka was one of the young up-and-coming starters. I think he finished second or third in the league in ERA that year where they played St. Louis in the playoffs, and he had the best adjusted ERA in Major League Baseball. So these are not two ham and eggers and things like that, but it's a good problem to have that you have so many guys who can start, but the mentality of pitchers, not saying that they're going to one out, not saying that they're going to want to be traded, not saying that they're going to, ask for, them to be released or anything like that with the Braves, because again, there'll be plenty of probably opportunity when somebody gets hurt or they need a sixth starter at some point or whatever. But that's a tough thing for either one of those guys to be told if you're going down to Gwinnett. And in talking to Grant, that may be what ends up happening with either of those guys. So I don't know. It would be interesting to see one who wins that fifth starter job, because your fifth starter is not the guy that normally wins you the World Series or things like that. That'll be on Fried, Wright, Morton, Strider, right? Those guys. Wright was a 20-game winner last year. Max Fried's the best left-hander in baseball. Strider was arguably the one or two best rookies in all of baseball. That's where the bulk of where they lean on comes from. But you've got two guys that have been experienced, have had success at the major league level. And if you're telling one of those guys that they're going to start their year off in Gwinnett, wonder how that's going to react, because neither of those guys is going to be in the bullpen. Neither guy's never pitched a single solitary game out of the bullpen. It's going to be interesting to see who wins that job. And then at the end of the day, who ends up starting in Gwinnett? Who ends up starting down there? And how quickly if Anderson's pitching well in Gwinnett, or if Soroka's pitching well in Gwinnett, how quickly will they call one of those guys back up if that in fact is what happens? I wouldn't mind seeing at the beginning of the year when guys are trying to get adjusted, I wouldn't mind seeing a sixth starter and having all of those guys pitch, and especially to get them big league action. Yes, unless somebody has a setback and an injury, getting those guys action at the major league level. That's what I would like to see. I wouldn't mind seeing, if they have to use six guys or if they have to rotate their back end of their rotation, that I wouldn't mind seeing those guys up there. But it will be an interesting thing to watch and see if one of those guys is sent down, what the mentality is of either one of those guys, because that's definitely a definite step back for either of those guys, given the success they've had at the major league level. I want to talk about my friends over at Built Bar. Listen, Built.com is the place to go. We're looking for, your snacks that are low sugar, low carb, low calorie, but high protein, right? New you, trying to get in shape, different things like that, okay? Go to Built.com today. Check out their wide menu of all their different flavors out there and get you a box of Built Bars. Now, you can also now go to the pharmacy section of Walmart, or you can go to Sam's Club and get your box of Built Bars as well. Same great taste, same great flavors, same great 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. Try the marshmallow puffs if you want something for a little different taste and texture. But now you can go either to Built.com, or you can go the brick and mortar route, where you go to Walmart, or you can go to Sam's Club and check them out there. They got all the different flavors that you want, all the same great flavors, all the same great product lines, but now available in the brick and mortar sections of Walmart at the pharmacy, or going to Sam's Club, or go the traditional route to Built.com. We're looking for those snacks out there to get healthier. Go to Built.com today and check them all out.